Thank you guys for having me. It's always a pleasure to come back and speak to the class and see how much the comm program has grown. Over the last few years. As Jared mentioned, I started out at ESPN as a part-time employee, pretty much right out of college. I moved out there with pretty much the clothes on my back and the few dollars that I had in my bank account from college. Moved out there on a whim in August of 2009 and worked part-time, pretty much worked 2 jobs just to kind of maintain and pay the bills. And I knew that if I worked hard enough that eventually I would get a break. Basically, previous to that, I attended numerous conferences across Chicago, Michigan, pretty much you name it, just to kind of try to get my name out there. Luckily, I had a friend that worked at ESPN at the time. He was a researcher at ESPN, so he was able to introduce me to some of his bosses at the National Association for Black Journalists, their convention they had in Chicago. So he introduced me to a few of his bosses. I took some assessments for them, applied for one of their research positions, found out that I didn't have as much vast knowledge in terms of across all sports as one should have when working in the research department. I always thought that working in research, you pretty much just have a computer, you're able to look stuff up. But after talking to my friend and everything like that, I found out that you pretty much at least have to have a nice, robust set of skills and have some of those thoughts in the back of your mind, just so you can kind of quickly get them to the anchors and different things like that. Because a lot of times they want to run with something during commercial break, like, hey, when was the last time somebody hit 50 home runs and had 50 doubles? And sometimes you don't have 2 minutes to kind of look that up on the computer. So pretty much speaking on that, so I didn't have the vast enough knowledge to work in the research department, but I had enough sports knowledge, just basic skill sets, knowing how to calculate ERA, basic field goal percentage, different things like that. And so they pretty much had started this separate department called Stats and Analysis. And they were like, hey, you can come out work part-time. Here we can't offer you anything full-time right now, but you can come out, move out, see how it goes, and we'll go from there. So then I worked my way up from there. Pretty much what the Stats and Analysis department does is pretty much every game or every score you see across mobile, ESPN.com, all of those scores are funneled through our department. So if you can imagine, pretty much every score for every Division I pro sport, all of those scores, stats, notes, and trends pretty much are funneled through our department. From there, pretty much my night-to-night duties were to monitor a lot of games, making sure the data was coming in from our provider accurately. For most pro sports, we pretty much had feeds that were 99 to 100% accurate, but for a lot of the college sports, some teams didn't send us feeds, so some of those feeds we would do in-house with our in-house program called SA Live. We would do stats for some of the more high-profile games, like the top 25 games, because if stats goes down for those games, obviously you as sports fans and different things like that, you want to know what's going on in that game if you can't watch. So we wanted to have the ability to monitor those stats more closely and not have somebody maybe in the press box kick a cord out and we be without stats for 3 to 5 minutes. So a lot of times for the more high-profile games, any games that are on our air, we're going to do stats for those games in-house, and we have a separate program that we do. But for some of the smaller games, we pretty much rely on the fees that were being provided from the school. So then from that point, I pretty much was in charge of making sure all the stats were coming in fine, making sure everything looked good on ESPN.com. If anything looked awry, I would call the school, try to get them to fix various things. And then from that point, we would put the game to bed. We have the department is broken down into 3 areas. We have like a pregame area that's responsible for like roster maintenance, schedule maintenance, making sure we have, correct game start times, making sure we have the entire schedule for every Division I football team. Obviously, Division II and III, we enter those in as score onlys. We don't take the fees for those scores, but we do provide scores for those games. And then as it gets closer to playoff time, we'll kind of provide in-progress updates for those games just because it's not as many during playoffs. But from that point, like I said, we have our pregame team, our in-game team, which probably makes sense. It's our in-game where you're monitoring games as they're going on. And then we have our third area, which is called our post-game area, which basically we consider putting the games to bed. We're scrubbing stats, making sure everything looks accurate in our system and our databases on the back end, making sure everything looks good on ESPN.com. Anything that pretty much no discrepancy should get beyond the post-game area. They're pretty much our last line of defense in terms of making sure all the data and stats are scrubbed for everything that you see on various outputs. So those are the three areas. So then once I kind of got my foot in the door and monitoring, getting the basics, I was able to kind of train on NBA and do some various other tasks that some of the more experienced staff would do. During those shifts, I was kind of able to make a small impact. Like I would provide like notable tips, trends that I would notice during the game. Like some games we would be tracking on our air and I'd say, oh, hey, like I noticed that Russell Westbrook down the stretch, the last 5 minutes of the game, he only passed once, you know? So he had like 4 straight possessions where he came down and didn't pass to a teammate. And so then managers and higher ups in the department kind of started noticing that I had somewhat of an eye for advanced stats and different things like that, making sure that they're like, oh, okay, Gil is able to kind of manage this. He's able to do the basic stuff that we ask of him to do, and now he's able to kind of provide a little more, you know, next level or a little more to what, you know, we have people doing on the side. So then during NBA shifts, I would kind of help out with the NBA tracking team, just kind of noticing various trends. And I'll be honest with you guys, when I first started, our tracking was pretty much like you would try to come up with 3 to 5 trends that you would think might happen in a game just based off previous games. Now our tracking sheets are very robust. We're able to track like who's on the court, who's off the court, what type of lineups our teams are playing, big versus small. We're looking at like what team does, like LeBron, how many dribbles or how many possessions start with a LeBron pass, or pretty much now our tracking sheets are very robust where we're able to kind of provide more in-depth analysis as opposed to just the basic like, oh, this team averaged 1.2 points per possession. We're able to kind of go deeper into the box score. Like LeBron he was 4 of 7 when guarded by Kawhi Leonard as opposed to, you know, 2 of 10 when guarded by any other player. So then I started doing that, started working on the college football VAT team, tracking games, kind of providing stats and various things like that. And then kind of just worked my way up from there. I would kind of like to show you a little bit of my day-to-day work on a college football Saturday. So during the week, I am responsible for writing notes for 5 to 7 college football games for the week. So we're looking at historical stats, we're looking at series notes, like this team has beaten this team 4 of the last 5 times. Maybe this team is ranked in the top 5. This team hasn't beaten a top 5 team in 10 years. So we're looking at kind of those outlier stats, some stats that you might find in game notes or various things like that, but we're kind of trying to take it to another level. So I'll kind of show you a few of our, so this one set of notes that I wrote this week. Notre Dame won 4 of the last 5 meetings. Of the last 7 meetings, 6 have been decided by 1 score. Basically, you look at these as if this game was being broadcast on our air, what types of notes could you see the announcer or the play-by-play guy using in analyzing a game? So that's kind of what our job is in terms of writing the game notes. Because you can pretty much say, like right off the bat, like, oh, Notre Dame has won 4 of the last 5 meetings between these teams. And that's just a quick note that the anchor can say as soon as the broadcast comes on. That's something that they can quickly use to say, hey, Notre Dame probably should beat this team, but that one time that they didn't beat them, here's what happened. Obviously, another note with Notre Dame looking to start 7-0 for the first time since 2012. That season, they played in the BCS National Championship game, so just another thing like, hey, the last time they did this, they did this. We have an advanced metric here. It's called our Football Power Index. Pretty much, we have a metric that calculates or simulates games based on like many different various simulations, at least over like 10,000 simulations. and it looks at the percentage chance that a team has to beat another team. So basically, Notre Dame is favorite in all of their remaining games. 62% chance to beat, or 62% chance to make the college football playoff. Obviously, the playoff is a big thing for our company the last 3 or 4 years. We've pretty much had it since its inception. So we have the ability to calculate like, hey, this team is like, say, Clemson. They have a 47% chance to make the playoff. I think Notre Dame last week before beating Virginia Tech, I think they were at 47, I believe, last week. And then obviously with one win over a top 25 team, it's already up to 62%. Notre Dame's not in a conference, so they don't have to play a conference championship. So it calculates that, it factors into that, whereas Clemson has to go through like a Miami or another team from the ACC playing in a conference championship. This note on Pittsburgh, obviously going against top 5 teams, and both of those wins have come as an unranked team. Obviously, Pittsburgh isn't ranked this week, so that note fits. It kind of helps tell a story. If Pittsburgh does win, they've done this in the past. Any questions so far?
Did you cover any like Alabama games?
Yes. Yes, we track a ton of Alabama games. Like, obviously, Tua is a big story now. We're actually we're in the works of trying to figure out if this is like the best Alabama team ever. Just looking at numbers, like obviously it's hard to say it's the best team ever. Like if they were to not win a national title, then how can it necessarily be considered the best team ever? But we're definitely always looking at ways to, recap how the team is doing. I think one way we kind of looked at, like looking at their offensive efficiency, like their offense is contributing like 21 points to their final score margin, essentially. So obviously they're beating teams like by 40 points a game. So their offense is contributing like 21 points to that final margin. In years past, their offense was only contributing like 8 to 9, 10, 12 points. And obviously their quarterback play is much better. We've talked about it in like our college football meetings. It's hard to really talk about a team through 6 weeks just based on who they've played, because obviously I think the only real test they had was Texas A&M a couple weeks ago, or Ole Miss maybe. And obviously that game, after the first touchdown, it really wasn't a game beyond that. But yeah, we do cover them.
How do you calculate what percentage somebody has to win? Like 70% chance to win a game? How do you even?
That's basically, we have an analytics team, and they're really good about coming up with a lot of these various metrics. So they pretty much have simulations based on how a team is performing, recruiting, various things like that. It's a metric. It's not an end-all be-all, but it's one of those things like they ran through various simulations based on past seasons and basically expected of what. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, the analytics team has a formula. We pretty much just run with their numbers of what they have, and if something doesn't look right, we definitely have the ability to ask them, and they'll say it's because of this. For instance, like when Ohio State was without Urban Meyer those first 3 weeks of the season, like FPI didn't necessarily take into account him not being there, just because it's hard to account or weight a coach not being there, just because like obviously the players on the field are playing, but I think they said they could have done it if it was really that drastic of a change, but it didn't really change it much with him not being there those first 3 weeks. And obviously they kind of ran through TCU that third game. That was probably their toughest game of the 3 without him. But did that answer your question, kind of?
I mean, yeah, it probably never makes sense to me. But
No, it's fine. Trust me, they all don't make sense to me either. Like that's like I don't really deal with analytics. Like I don't do anything analytical. Like the closest thing to analytics is I track games and I write stories off of what we're tracking from the game. Like I don't necessarily, like I might use like the win probability note. Like a few weeks ago I was tracking Oregon, Stanford, and when Stanford or Oregon was inside the 5-yard line and fumbled, I kind of looked at their win probability change from when they were at the 1-yard line to them fumbling and having a scoop in the fumble recovery for a touchdown. I kind of did a few notes based off of that. But yeah, I don't really deal with analytics. I don't know what goes into calculating a lot of that. They're much better at what they do than I am. But yeah, we pretty much, we go with their numbers. they spent a lot of time coming up with that, similar to like the playoff predictor, which is something they added this year. They're always thinking of ways to kind of try and use advanced metrics and various things. So let's see, what other game? So we also try to look at stories within a specific game. So the one story here was Indiana's running game has been really good. I mean, obviously it's easier to tell a story of when a team wins, why they win, but Indiana's running attack averaging 217 yards a game and it's 4 wins and only 57 yards and it's 2 losses. It's probably fair to say for somebody on the outside looking in, it's like, well, in their losses, they're probably throwing the ball a lot more, but it also tells you that story that when they're not running the ball well, they probably get behind, so thus they have to pass a little more. And then it just kind of ties into what Iowa does defensively and what they allow. So we kind of try to tell stories on both sides, like, hey, this team does this really well, well, this team does this stopping this really well, and try to match them up head to head. This is an interesting note I found here. Iowa this season allowed only 10 first quarter points. So obviously it just kind of means they get off to good starts. And the only time they allowed a touchdown in the first quarter is with like 58 seconds left in the quarter. So they pretty much almost went, 5 games without giving up a touchdown in the first quarter, which is probably tough to do in a college football game. So tracking. So I told you guys a little bit about my work with our college football tracking team. So pretty much what I do is I work with our managers to look at pretty much starting probably Friday night, Saturday night, I'll start looking at the schedule for the upcoming week. So this week I'll start looking at week 8. And I'll look at what are the best games on the schedule that we should be tracking internally. Generally, we're going to want to track games that are on our air because we get the most ROI from our own broadcasters. We're not reaching out to CBS or NBC providing them tracking notes. That defeats the purpose of us being ESPN. So generally, we try to steer clear of games not on our air, just because we get more return on investment tracking games on our air. But obviously, if the matchup warrants us tracking it, then we will do so, similar to last week with the Oklahoma-Texas game. We tracked it. We don't really provide a ton of in-game notes, but we will try to provide some post-game notes that we can get used on Twitter, SportsCenter, Longhorn Network, used a few of our tracking notes after the game. So generally, like I said, what my job is, look at the schedule, see how many games we want to track, look at how many trackers we have devoted that we can devote towards tracking games. I generally send that list over to my manager on Saturday afternoon or Saturday evening, because a lot of times the company doesn't know what the ABC primetime game will be the following week, so sometimes there's a hang up there. But I generally can look at the schedule and be like, okay, these are probably going to be the best games, and this game will probably be slated into the primetime slot. So once I do that, I'll send that over to him. He'll send it back. I'll get the tracking schedules added for the people that are going to track for the following week. I'll get those shifts added. I'm pretty much in charge of assigning their shifts, making sure they know when they're working, making sure everyone across the company or across our department knows which games we're doing. And then on Saturday, we're responsible for tracking. What that involves is, so we have our own internal Slack channel that we use. So pretty much producers, associate producers, managers, APs, highlights people, pretty much all those people are going to be in this one specific chat. So this chat isn't just for our tracking notes, it's pretty much for all of our college football content. So anytime we get a request on, say, a Monday or Tuesday about a game for the upcoming weekend, those questions generally are funneled through this chat, or we have what's called our SIG content inbox where those questions come through as well. So pretty much if somebody throws a question in, I think if I scroll up here, we'll see like some Monday. Let's see. So all throughout the week, sorry, I'll scroll up to. Yeah, this is like a running. So this is all pretty much a Saturday. So we're not just looking at, like I said, the games that we're tracking, we're looking at all games across the board. So even if we aren't tracking it, we provide some kind of analysis or a number behind something that happened in the game. So like this note here, UConn's probably has the worst defense in college football. I believe there was a note floating around not too long ago that the football team was allowing more points than like the women's basketball team allowed per game. So that kind of says a lot about what the football team is doing right now. Obviously, they're playing with a lot of young. I think like they have 9 or 10 freshmen that they're playing, true freshmen. So that goes into it too. But their defense just isn't really good. So pretty much as you see just throughout the day, you have various notes being thrown in the chat about things that are going on within a specific game. So then we get questions like this all throughout the day, especially from producers or blog writers or various people like that. They want to know like, hey, I just need to confirm, or normally it's like an AP just wanting to confirm a note that they saw or something that they heard on another broadcast or anything like that. So we have generally on a Saturday between 20 and 25 people devoted to just monitoring this specific chat, just because over the course of an entire Saturday, there's a lot of content that goes out. We also have, so this chat is also synonymous for other various sports as well. We have an NBA chat, college basketball chat. So pretty much anything that you see in the chat goes on in other chats as well. Our MLB pro sports chat. We actually have we have a gambling chat. A lot of notes go into, like this note here, Nebraska's allowed 40 points in each of his last 2 games. They never allowed 40 points in the current head coach's 26 starts when he was a quarterback. So what my general job is on Saturdays, like I said, we're generally tracking games. So what we like to do is provide beyond the box score content. So notes such as like Ohio State allowing 6 plays of 50 plus yards. They had 3 such plays all of last year. Let's see. Looking at Ohio State's offense in the first half of the Penn State game. And then these are a lot of the good notes that we generally provide. Looking at how a quarterback does downfield, looking at how a quarterback does against the blitz, how a team is running inside, outside the tackles, looking at how a player does left side of the numbers, middle of the field, right side of the numbers, pretty much anything that you can probably think of in a given game. We have pretty much a sheet that is devoted towards all of that data. So we have one person tracking it. They're tracking it live, and then we have one person, myself and one other individual generally on a Saturday, who's considered the hub. And then as they're tracking the game, we're extrapolating notes from their sheets and pushing it to content, trying to get it on air.
Do you just do like games, or do you do awards and like other stuff that happens off the field or court?
I mean, we monitor like the award, like we do keep track of the award shows, but our main focus is generally providing content for the games as they're going on. But we do, like, obviously we monitor the award show. I think a lot of the guys who are up for various awards, they'll have some notes on hand for them, but we aren't necessarily providing anything live as the show goes on. But so nice passing versus blitz comparison. I think this is first half numbers. McSorley was really good. So then once the game is over, we have what we call our game analysis package. So every week, like I said, pretty much all those games that we're tracking weekly, we write a post or a packet on those games. So we generally rank them by the best game of the day. So obviously Ohio State led this packet off. So these are one of the notes from the packet. So he's very good throwing it short, allowing his receivers to run after the catch. All other passes, he wasn't great. And then you see this nice little carrot here. He's 3 for 3, 73 yards on screen passes on the final drive. So obviously one of the big things for Notre Dame, since they went from Brandon Wimbush to Ian Book, the offense has been far better since making that quarterback change. So we were able to just kind of break it down. This isn't anything next level, but it's pretty much the story of, hey, this team's offense has transformed since this quarterback took over. Here's why. They're averaging nearly 50 points a game since he became the starter, only 23 points per game with the other quarterback. Now, within this, we can also break it down other numbers like, hey, this quarterback's better throwing downfield. This quarterback isn't as good against the blitz. But this pretty much here, it doesn't, every great note doesn't have to be like a next level kind of note, even though that's what our main job is to do. But sometimes a normal standard graphic tells a great story. Obviously, Clemson kind of struggled that game. That was Trevor Lawrence's first start. Obviously, that was a game he got knocked out at halftime, and so we wanted to look at, how the team did when the second quarterback came in. Led him to 20 points when he was in there. He was huge to keep the team undefeated. Again, nothing next level, but again, it tells a story of what people on SportsCenter are going to talk about. What do they want to talk about? What are the main stories on a given game? And so that's kind of what our job is, to kind of help provide intel. Travis Etienne kind of led the way in the second half. The reason we kind of bulleted this note at 71%, they ran the ball 71% of the time in the second half, partially because they leaned on Travis Etienne. He had 32 rushes, 198 yards in the second half, or 32 in the second half. He had a huge second half, huge fourth quarter. I don't know why this picture looks so massive in this picture. So yeah, then from that we have
Zone really well played after the couple negative steps that they had on that drive.
Yeah, it's funny. It was a 70.
So just a basic font here. De'Aaron King, first touchdown of the game, his 9th touchdown pass on play action passes this season. Something very subtle that most of you probably wouldn't notice or wonder, like, hey, where'd they get that number from? That number comes from us. We're tracking the game on all Thursday night games. We track every Thursday night game because it's on ESPN. Numbers like that come directly from us. So obviously able to provide notes for the SportsCenter anchors. And in this note here, just able to kind of tell why the Ohio State defense was able to have so much success against Sam Darnold when he was at. So that's something that comes directly from us. So that was something just basic. But again, it told the story. All season, Sam Darnold struggled with turnovers. What was the big story of him coming out during draft prep and all of that? His turnovers. Again, something subtle, but it made a major impact on what happened during the game, what was going on with him all season. That was just a huge story. So that one was during the Oregon-Stanford game. Obviously, Oregon was up big, late third quarter, and then obviously they kind of imploded down the stretch. Stanford kind of got them in overtime. 99% chance to win. Not 100, but 99. Let's see, what did I put in that packet for the Oregon week 4? So just their win probability changes. It was 99% after rushing touchdown. From that point, they fumbled twice. One was returned for a touchdown. Got a 4th down stop, which pushed their win probability back to 98%. And then Stanford forced a fumble, which led to the game-tying score. A nice little graphic just showing the subtle but major changes throughout the game. And then just kind of a big story. Justin Herbert was really good early in the game. 25 of 27, was on pace to set the school record for completion percentage in the game. In overtime, he kind of struggled. Why did he struggle? He was 14 for 14 targeting Dylan Mitchell before overtime, and he was over 3 targeting him in overtime. Yeah, what questions do we have? I know I threw a lot of data at you.
Like an anchor like Stephen A. or like his name Shannon Sharp and Skip, like how do they get their stats? Do they come through somebody like your department or?
Yeah, so what pretty much I'm assuming it's the same way for Fox. Every show has a researcher assigned for that specific show. They have show meetings roughly an hour or 2 hours before every show, just to kind of go over like the rundown for what do they want to talk about for this specific show. And then what the researcher's job is from that point is to find out what the anchors want to talk about and then find numbers to support what it is that they want to talk about. So you have a researcher assigned every show. Sometimes what you may give them in show prep or before or have a graphic built might be something totally different than they want to talk about, because maybe Max came up with a good point and he wants to have a counterpoint to go against Max, or various things like that. So yeah, every show has a researcher assigned, and they pretty much are there to support and help the anchors throughout the show.
So like Stephen A., he doesn't do his own homework basically. He has guys that give him all the, he tells them, I know. So he doesn't do any of it?
I don't know if he does specifically. I can't say that he doesn't, because I'm not a researcher. But I'm sure like some of them do some research, and they have at least an idea of like, hey, I noticed this during the Cowboys game. What can you give me based on this? So I'm not saying none of them do their own work, but we kind of help them along with specific things that, they want to talk about, or graphics that they're going to show. He said, who does the least amount of work? I don't know, because I don't work as closely with the talent, just because like our department is kind of separate from research, even though we do work together. But I know we definitely do have some talent that lean on us a lot, more so for like college football broadcast talent. The APs that are assigned to some of the games, like they ask us like very simple, monotonous requests that they could answer. They can answer themselves. Look, I'll scroll through the chat on let me see if I can find like a Monday. Let's see. So this is Sunday. So let's see here. So like stuff like this. When was the last time Louisville started 0-3 in conference play? You could almost go through, it would probably take a little work, because most of our APs and various people in the company, they do have access to our True Media accounts that house a lot of our data and various things like that. So a lot of people do have access to a lot of those tools that can get them the information. Again, a lot of times, I think the problem is they're told to confirm with the stats and analysis department. So they use that as I don't have to confirm if I can just get them to give me the answer, as opposed to finding it and then saying, hey, can you confirm this? Because we do have people that say, hey, I found this note, can you confirm? And then that's different than opposed to, he did kind of follow up with oh, I'm seeing 2009, can somebody help? But we get a lot of questions like that. This is a very interesting question that I actually wound up answering. How many starting quarterbacks has Kansas had? I've also gotten a very obscure, like, what does it take to build or rebuild a program, which is a very vague question. It more so depends on what it is that you're looking for to back up what it is you're trying to sell. So I think I went back to him with here's a few notable coaches who took over a program that won maybe 3 or fewer games 1 year and then won maybe 10 games within 4 or 5 seasons or something like that. And that gives you a starting point. And then from there, you can take it as far as you want it. But you got.
What kind of like software do you use to find this? Like you probably don't go on like the school's website and literally go through their box scores.
No, so what happens is we have pretty much all of our games are housed in our internal database. And then we have what's called a true media site that then all the game data gets uploaded to that site. All the base level game data gets uploaded to that site. And then from there, we have an account with SIS, which is Stats Info Solutions. And pretty much our account with them is they track every FBS game pretty much for us, just because that's a lot of games for us. We couldn't track every game. So we pretty much pay them to track every game, and it tracks pretty much all of our passing against the blitz, air yards, pressure percentage. Pretty much we get all of that data from them on like Monday or Tuesday of the following week. So obviously the numbers that we specifically would track on like a Saturday probably will change slightly on like a Monday or Tuesday once we get their tracking data. But that's pretty much where we get their stuff from, because in years past we used to have an account with Stats Inc. and they only provided us Power 5 numbers. So obviously having all of FBS as opposed to being able to limit, oh, he's best in the Power 5, like that excludes like 65 teams, so at least now we're able to say this player is best in FBS, or they're pressuring at 39% of opponents' dropbacks, best in the FBS, as opposed to saying best in Power 5.
And then like that starting quarterback stack, could you just keyword search that? Or
In our database, I could. Let me see if I can. Let's see. Can I get on True? I don't know if I can get on True Media here. Pretty much, I would just go into our, because I don't think I can access it here. I can do it from my laptop. But pretty much I can access the account pretty much on any computer locally, and I can pretty much manipulate the data to get what it is I want.
So do individual college football teams, say Michigan State playing Michigan this weekend or something, do they take their scouting notes? Do they get those from you, or do they have their own own guys that do their own analysis?
Yeah, they'll have their own guys do a lot of their. Yeah, they might supplement something that they may have seen us send out, like, oh, this might be something to look into. But yeah, they have their own scouting departments and various things like that. So yeah, the only people that might reach out to us, not necessarily directly from the school, is like an anchor or talent that might be working at game, and they'll ask us for stuff specifically, like, oh, I heard this in a press conference. Can you confirm if what I heard is true or not? So. It's funny. I didn't do any internship within Stats. I didn't at all. I interned at the Detroit Zoo, actually. No, I'm dead serious. Like, I interned at the Detroit Zoo. Yes, Dr. Oswald came up. But yeah, so I interned at the Detroit Zoo. I think the biggest thing is I announced a lot of the basketball games here. I did obviously videotaping hockey games and basketball games and various things like that. So, a lot of that stuff you can include on your resume. Anything that you can do Statistically, if you have a background in, stats or a database query, or we're big in, like, if you're an Excel wizard, that's kind of used in our department. But you don't necessarily, like, there's no, like, recipe. I guess if you have a background, like, interning at, like, a Baseball Info Solutions or a place like that you would enjoy working at, I think it's helpful. But just having, like, a base knowledge of, especially for, like, the part-time role at our department, just having a base knowledge of sports and having an interest in sports, I think that can definitely help you get in the door. And then once you kind of grasp a lot of the basic things that we ask of a lot of our part-time employees, then you can kind of do some of that additional, like, oh, hey, I found this interesting. I would like to possibly help out with next level tracking. Or I was monitoring this NBA game and I noticed that, these 3 stats happen that, we might have not been tracking, or various things like that. So a lot of that, like, little stuff helps on the side. But I don't think it's necessarily anything resume specific. I guess in terms of me, I guess it didn't happen. But definitely, like, networking. If you can attend conferences and various things like that, just because, going there, you can meet and see a lot of different people from a lot of different companies. And you can take those assessments in person as opposed to possibly taking it online or various things like that. So that was kind of the thing that helped me the most, is aside from having a friend there, I was able to take the assessment and kind of got my base knowledge, or got my foot in the door by doing that. Does that help answer your question? Okay. You said, oh.
What's the toughest sport to, like, do your job?
I don't do soccer. I just personally don't. I don't do soccer. I don't do hockey. It's not that I won't watch it. I just, like, we actually have a robust data set in terms of, like, soccer heat maps and where passes are coming from and various things like that, but I'm just not necessarily interested in the sport. But the good thing about where I work is we have various people who are interested in finite sports. So, like, I like the NBA, college basketball, college football. Those are, like, my 3 main sports, but college football is, like, my bread and butter. So I don't necessarily, like, I might have to monitor a hockey game occasionally if there's somebody in the room or if there's not anybody in the room that enjoys the sport, just because production has to happen. But for the most part, if I'm not necessarily interested in the sport, I don't necessarily have to do it. I might have to know how to possibly maneuver around, like, a technical issue, possibly if I'm the only one in the room on a given day, but I don't necessarily have to deal with sports that I'm not necessarily interested in, just because we have so many people who do like those other sports. Would you like me to cue up our basketball? Yes. So, with the basketball team, you guys obviously winning last year, Dr. Ospa asked me to put together a few things that, if we were covering the team, what would we put together in terms of how we would cover the team. So just from a few things that I noticed last year, I'm gonna ask you guys this question and you tell me if I'm right or wrong. Would you say the team was close to how West Virginia plays in terms of playing a lot of players, pressing a lot, full court press? You said what? That's fair. Okay, West Virginia's close to y'all. I'm with it. But is that a similar makeup in terms of? I'm on par. Okay. So, what I did was, hey, here's a couple notes on how we would cover Ferris hoops based on what a team like Ferris would like to do. So basically, I took a couple notes just based off West Virginia. So Bucknell, they average less than a half a point per possession against West Virginia's press than on possessions when West Virginia didn't press. So obviously when they did press, they scored a lot less as opposed to when they didn't press, when they averaged 1.26 points per possession. Another note that I would have came up with is this one here. Forced 18 turnovers, as many as Marshall had committed in his previous 2 tournament games combined. It's very good for you guys. And then obviously just points per game off. So off those 18 turnovers, they scored 26 points off turnovers. They're most in the game since scoring 28 on December 23rd. And then what West Virginia or Ferris allowed coming into the game off turnovers. Here's another note. 12 of those 18 turnovers came on possessions that began with the press, with all those turnovers leading to 20 of those 26 points off turnovers. And then, obviously, speaking of playing a lot of players, West Virginia's bench outscored Bucknell 37-5. Lamont West, 15 points off the bench, most in the tournament game since Gary Brown scored 15 in 2012. And then what they average off the bench entering the game. Did I hit it on the head? So thank you guys again for having me. It's always a pleasure to come back. I'm always humbled when I come back. Definitely if you guys need anything, Dr. Oswald has my contact information. Shoot me an email, call me, whatever you guys might need.